What is up, everyone? Phil here for KO Gaming, and I just finished playing through the latest installment of a Telltale Games episodic narrative called Batman: The Telltale Games series. Now, there was a lot of speculation about this game leading up to it, because unlike a lot of the other Telltale Games series that have a third-party license, this one was dealing with a character that's near and dear to our hearts, someone who we've seen in movies, in comic books, in TV series, in cartoons. We've seen tons of incarnations of Batman over the years, and the question was, how would Telltale handle this game, being that Telltale games are typically all narrative based, and even though they have a little bit of maybe quick time event action here and there, how are they going to translate the formula of a Batman game into one of their episodic narrative releases? And I'm here to talk a little bit about that. But just as much as I'll be talking about the core game itself, there's also a new feature in this Batman episodic game called crowd play. Now, if you're not aware, this will allow other people to take control of your game and be able to vote on what options the character should say, what decisions Batman and Bruce Wayne should make during the course of the game. It's the first time that Telltale has ever done anything like this, and I was so intrigued at trying out crowd play that I actually implemented it in my playthrough and live stream of the very first episode. Now, I'm on the fence about whether I'm going to do it in future episodes, but for the purposes of experimentation and review, I figured it would make sense, which is why I chose to do it. So this review is going to be part just about plain review of the game and part about this crowd play feature. Here we go. Episode 1 of Batman puts you right into the heels of your favorite caped crusader as he's in the midst of foiling a bank robbery. During the action, he eventually stumbles upon the Catwoman who actually had beaten the bank robbers to the punch. There's a fight that ensues on the rooftop. You eventually get the loot that she was trying to steal from the bank. All hell ensues, and then you become Bruce Wayne. Now, this is where the game gets interesting, because unlike other Batman games, in particular the Rocksteady Arkham series that we've played as of late, this game really does not primarily focus on the Batman character, but instead on the behind-the-scenes kind of stuff that Bruce Wayne does. He's an upper-crust citizen who has to schmooze with Harvey Dent as he runs for mayor and hold fundraisers. He has to deal with the gang leaders such as Falcone and their influence over the city. He's constantly doing press conferences and things to try to get his image, and it's really interesting because you've never really seen that side of the Batman before in a video game form. Because let's face it, if you were playing Batman Arkham City and there was half the game was doing press conferences, you'd probably be bored to tears. But that's not the case here. Actually being able to choose the different dialogue options for Bruce Wayne in these situations was quite interesting. And it was funny because you were actually able to choose options that maybe made Bruce and Batman seem a little bit more aggressive, or in particular, Bruce seemed like more of a jokester, or maybe just a big kind of a dick to people. And that was kind of cool to be able to see that. Gee, I wonder if I were to play through again and choose that other dialogue option, if it would actually change the tone of anything. And that was kind of cool. And so, over the 2 hours that you're going to be playing episode 1, there's going to be action. There's going to be a mystery involving Bruce Wayne's parents and whether they had any kind of actual ties to the Falcone crime ring, and whether or not they were as upstanding citizens as all of Gotham had actually believed them to be. There's even a situation where they possibly might be getting framed. Also, there's some cool characters that show up, including Vicky Vale, the longtime reporter for the Gazette, known for all her interactions with Bruce Wayne as well as Batman over the years, as well as Oswald Cobblepot makes a kind of awesome cameo appearance here before he's ever become the Penguin. So yes, the story of this Batman Telltale series is kind of a mainstream prequel to the Batman that we know and love from the Arkham games, and it's kind of cool to have that and have that perspective. Batman the Telltale series really doesn't do too much to break that cookie-cutter mold of what you would expect from previous Telltale games in the series. For example, it uses the same kind of cel-shaded graphics as Tales from the Borderlands last year. It's got the same narrative trees where you have to choose a dialogue option within a certain period of time or else the game does it for you. And yes, you've got your standard QuickTime events. And similar to games of previous Telltale outings, unfortunately, a lot of the times, it seems like your interaction really doesn't make any kind of an impact on the story or even the progression of the game. There were some QuickTime events where I knew I didn't do the button input in time, yet the game still progressed and Batman didn't even take any damage. There were certain dialogue trees where it seemed like all of the options almost were saying the same thing, So really, it just becomes kind of a necessary evil of, oh, you need a little bit of interactivity here to pretend like you're playing a game, when in a lot of ways, these Telltale games are just playing out a necessary interactive story rather than an actual video game, and a lot of people always have issue with that, but if you're used to this Telltale formula at this point, it's not going to be that big of a deal. The one unique thing that this game really does from the other Telltale series is that there are certain segments where you'll either be investigating a crime or you'll be planning out your plan of attack against a certain group of criminals where you have to do a little bit of advanced kind of reconnaissance. You'll be using drones and or your kind of detective powers to look for clues or look for ways to attack certain enemies, and what you need to do is connect things, like connect two clues together to make a deduction about what happened at the crime scene, or deduct a way which you can strike at an enemy and disarm him without him being able to really strike back at you. And it's okay, but it only happens twice during the entire 2+ hour long episode, so it doesn't really add that much. I don't know, I guess we'll really have to see as this series progresses on whether or not it's going to have a significant impact, or it's just going to be the one little mini thing that they add to make it feel fresh from the other games. So what did I like most about Episode 1? Well, first off, the plot. It's kind of a mystery. There's all this intrigue regarding Bruce and his parents and what was their real involvement with crime and stuff in Gotham, and it really leads to kind of a part of the Batman lore that we didn't really explore in video game form before, especially being able to play the role of Bruce in many different parts of the game, being able to kind of hobnob with the snobs and take dialogue choices to see how Bruce would actually interact with the high and mighty of Gotham. It's something different and refreshing, and it was well appreciated. I also liked the fact that you could see certain characters out of their element. For example, seeing Oswald Cobblepot before he ever became the Penguin, that was pretty awesome. And the fact that this is kind of a semi-prequel to the mainstream Batman lore that we're all used to allows them to maybe do a few things and take a few liberties that maybe normally they wouldn't have be able to do if they had just done the modern day Batman. And of course, the length of Episode 1 being over 2 hours long gives them enough time to flesh through this introductory story and not have to rush. Even though there's tons of characters that are introduced and involved, it doesn't feel at any time like the pacing is too fast. It feels like it really was well directed, and I definitely like the fact that they give you a big chunky episode to start this episodic series of 5 separate episodes. What didn't I like about Episode 1? Well, first off, some of the dialogue options just seem like far too out of character for Bruce Wayne or Batman. Some of them are just over-the-top cocky or really cheesy comedy that he probably wouldn't say. Some of the Batman lines are just really, they're trying to force the difference between him either being this kind of character for justice, where maybe, oh, I'm just going to be nice to this criminal and interrogate him and maybe just intimidate him, versus brutally beating the crap out of him. That's a big dichotomy, and yes, Batman has been both of those in the past, but it seems like maybe they went a little bit too out of the range of what Batman or Bruce Wayne would say in certain situations, and it irked me a little bit. In addition to that, there were just too many situations where I felt like what I was saying or doing didn't matter. Now, if this had been the first Telltale game that I had ever played, maybe it wouldn't bother me. But the fact that, oh, I'm doing combat and I know I'm missing inputs, but it's not affecting anything, was just kind of annoying. And just felt more like, oh, I'm just going through the motions to progress the game, and I don't even have to be good at this in order to progress, and there really isn't much challenge whatsoever to the game. In addition, it does need to be said the game's a prequel, and being a prequel to the mainstream Batman storylines that we know and love, we obviously know that characters like Catwoman or Vicky Vale or Commissioner Gordon probably aren't going to get hurt or killed, because if they were, they wouldn't be able to be in all those stories that we already know about. So again, being that this is a prequel series does kind of take a little bit of the interest of the series out of it. For example, when we were all playing Batman Arkham City, did we know that the Joker was going to die? Of course not. But it was cool because they were able to do that because that was in the modern day. In this case, we all know Oswald Cobblepot isn't going to get killed, and it does take away a little bit of the interest in the plot line. One final thing, I have to say it. I'm sorry, Troy Baker, you're a great voice actor, but my fears from E3 when it was announced you would be the voice of Batman were realized. It's very out of character. I mean, when Troy Baker is voicing Bruce Wayne, he sounds exactly like Reese from Tales from the Borderlands last year. I mean, it's the same voice. There's no difference. and it just is out of character that it just pulls you out of the immersion of the game to be hearing the same voices of 20 people you've heard in the past. It really is annoying, and it breaks the immersion. In addition, when Bruce Wayne becomes Batman, he actually has to have a voice modulator in the suit to artificially lower his voice, because they knew Troy Baker probably couldn't pull off a deep voice, which is the gravelly thing we've come to know for Batman, and is simonious with his character. So again, why pick this guy except for the fact that he's a big high-profile voice actor? I honestly think that someone else could have done a better job in the character. However, I actually thought all the other voice actors did well. In fact, the voice of Sully from Uncharted 4 actually does the voice of Falcone, the crime boss of Gotham, and that was kind of cool, although again, it was kind of jarring, saying, oh, it sounds exactly like Sully, and it did break the immersion for a little bit, but I did get over that. So overall, did Batman Episode 1 break the mold? Not really. It was kind of paint by numbers, exactly what you would expect from TellTale, but the fact that you actually got to see a side of Batman in Bruce Wayne during a video game, which you almost never see, was refreshing and different and interesting. I like this mystery-style thriller aspect of the game. I'm hooked, and I cannot wait for Episode 2 to find out even further about Bruce's parents and what's actually going on with the plot line. It's very intriguing to me, and it hooked me, and so I have to say, overall, I really enjoyed the episode, and I'm looking forward to the next. But before we adjourn, now we've got to talk about this new crowd play aspect. If you're not aware what this is, while you're playing this TellTale game, you can actually enable a feature called crowd play that's brand new, which will bring up a website and a code to enter on that site. Anyone who's watching you play the game can log in and basically now take control of the voting options of the game. First off, you can vote up or down at any time during the course of the gameplay, which will basically turn the screen into a bunch of spammed icons, which is why for this episode, my entire screen was just constantly up, down, thumb up, thumb down, and you saw the name spammed all over the screen. I don't even know what that's for, because at the end of the episode, it never even tallies them up, so it seems completely pointless and just a way for someone to get their name on the screen rather than actually have some kind of significant input. But the real significant input comes with these dialogue trees where you have to choose one of 4 options. From what I'm to understand, people who logged into my stream during the course of the gameplay basically had a color code on their screen of their mobile device and or PC that they had logged into on this website, and if you hovered over the color code, it gave you the dialogue option of what it was going to be. The problem is, even lowering my latency to as much as I possibly could on YouTube, there was still a 7-second delay, so in most cases, people were not able to directly pick the dialogue that they liked for that situation. In fact, they were just reading the dialogues out of context and would just kind of mash on one to hope that it would win the polling and overall be the one that was picked for the gameplay. Obviously, this takes the choice out of the hands of the gamer, and it seems like it would be more for something maybe at a gaming convention where one of your favorite personalities goes on stage and says, all right, everyone, we're going to collectively play this game together and see what happens. Maybe we'll pick some funny choices or something. But for the most part, it doesn't really seem to add anything to the game. It's an interesting social experiment, but ultimately it just becomes a mishmashed mess, especially when you're trying to do it over the internet with a 7-second latency. It's just not viable in this day and age. Now, it has to be said, number one, unfortunately, overwhelmingly, one color, blue, won out most of the decisions, and I really feel that happened because people didn't have enough time to read the choices before they had to pick. So if there was like a 10 to 20 second buffer when it appeared on these people's screens who were watching the stream and logged into the website, maybe they'd have a little bit more time to intelligently pick an option, or at least figure out what the dialogue was at before they pick it, and I think that that should be implemented in the next version. In addition, I heard a lot of people were getting kicked out of it repeatedly. At one point we had over 200 people, and by the time that the stream ended, we only had 100 people who were logged in, because I guess the thing kept locking up and erroring out and not letting them back in. But majorly, the major complaint I have about it is that it killed the frame rate of my game. As you can see in all these videos, the frame rate of the game actually ran really smoothly without crowd play. But when I was using crowd play during my live stream, the frame rate dipped to sub 30 frames per second and became choppy in a lot of places, and that's kind of silly. Do you really want to sacrifice the quality of the gameplay and the visuals to have this interactivity aspect? Now, it was good for a social experiment, To be completely honest, unless there's massive demand for this in episodes 2 through 5, I'm probably not going to do it. I don't think that the technology is at the level where you can at least do this over a live stream yet. Maybe at one point they'll get it that way, or they'll refine it and improve it so that it works better. Like I said, maybe a 10 to 20 second warning so people can read through the options, the voice, or the dialogue options a little earlier and pick the right thing. But ultimately, I don't think it's ready yet. And of course, the fact that 90% of the people who tried to log in used some kind of a trolling name, which, you know what, it certainly didn't bother me whatsoever during my playthrough. But when you have people using names like this, I think that's going to be a major problem. Like, how on earth did TellTale not think that some asshole would try to do something like that and ban that name? I have no idea, and I could just see this leading to massive amounts of problems, especially because it's completely anonymous. You don't have to have any personal info or anything to actually do this, so any asshole can log in and say something insulting in a name and get away with it. So it was interesting to check it out. It was interesting for this first episode as a social experiment, but I'm not sure if I'll ever do it again in the future. Well, that is it for my review of Batman Episode 1. I certainly hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will be playing all the future episodes, so be sure to tune into KO Gaming for my feelings about those as well. If you liked this video, please consider giving it a like here on YouTube and spreading the word about KO Gaming amongst your friends. Please check the video description for a link to my raw playthrough of Batman Episode 1 over on my DSP Gaming Raw Gameplay channel, as well as a link where you can use a discount code to save 10% on any new Loot Crate subscription, as well as a link to my Patreon. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time here on KO Gaming.